Welcome to Tuesday, October 8th, 2024. Your podcast this morning is dedicated to the late, great Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Why? Because this song, one of his songs, came to mind this morning, and that is the song called The Waiting. And the waiting is the hardest part, is the tagline of that song, and that's more waiting. Hurry up and wait, as they say, for the weather pattern to change. But we did see, finally, the Aurora Borealis make a better showing. Now, it's been out, but it really made a good showing last night, as you can see in the photo there and other photos you'll see here in a moment. But the dry, warm weather continues. We'll have some breezy areas, but as we mentioned yesterday, we're not anticipating a lot of wind in this pattern. Now, there is a patch of moisture drifting through today and tomorrow that's going to be just enough for a few areas to see a weak opportunity for showers. Key word there is weak, so there's more waiting. So the Aurora did come out, and it did get farther south, and I'm sure we'll see some other photos coming on in, as the geomagnetic storm, which we thought was going to come in the 5th and 6th, really came more towards the 6th and 7th, about a day late. As we have mentioned before, Aurora forecasting is fickle, difficult, and this past few days has been a good example. But it did come out, and we did get some good showings across the northern hemisphere. The K-index finally really jumped up during the day yesterday and last night. So maybe we'll see what happens tonight. When we take a look at satellite imagery, not only in the west, but look, if you look across a lot of the nation, there is just nothing going on. But I want you to look real carefully right here over the Great Basin. See this little area of cloudiness? There's a little patch of mid-level moisture that's going to drift through today, tonight, and into Wednesday. It's just a little layer of extra moisture in the atmosphere that we haven't seen in a while. It's part of the upper low that came off the west coast. It's not very impressive, and I wouldn't even mention it for the fact that we just haven't had anything to talk about. And it's part of this little ripple in the atmosphere right here. But you see high pressure still dominating. There's Milton. And when you take a look at Milton, there it is, looking very impressive, getting better organized on the satellite imagery. And this is the path it's going to take. You've probably heard in the news that it's reached Category 5. There's a little bit of good news about it making Category 5 now, because it is going to go through its process, its cycle, so to speak. So by the time it gets to the Florida coast, we're hoping that it'll be somewhat weaker. It's still going to be a major hurricane. When we see the wind and the rain path, you can see very, very heavy rain along it, really focusing near that Tampa Bay area. But we talked about it maybe reaching its peak before it gets to Florida. As you can see, these are the wind gusts. You can see as it just churns along in the open waters, they're very strong. And then as it goes over land, it does weaken before picking up again as it goes off the peninsula. So we'll keep an eye on that. Luckily, it's not going to be impacting the Carolinas, maybe getting southern areas of Georgia. So this is where we are now, more of the same. And this is that little patch of moisture we talked about. I haven't shown you this graphic in a long time. This is where we may have a little bit of thunderstorm activity today. Of course, you really don't want it, because this tends to be the type of thunderstorm activity that's lightning starters. But there's a little bit of instability in this area right here that may produce virga, some sprinkles, an isolated thunderstorm. And when we take a look at the precipitation forecast between now and Friday, you can see along the path of that disturbance, there may be a few light showers. Nothing to write home about, mostly just virga. But the wind isn't much of a factor. This is through Friday. These are the peak wind gusts between now and Friday. So you can see along the lee side of the mountains near Cody, there's going to be a little bit of wind here. Nothing like what we saw over the weekend, though. And you can see a lot of 20s, some 30s. That's it. And for the west, that's really not all that bad. So we will have some breeziness, but we don't see the winds getting too crazy. By the weekend, it's more of the same. But we're starting to see, we've got this little low here. We're seeing a deeper trough forming in the northern Great Lakes. We'll talk about this here in a minute. That's going to send some colder air south. So things are starting to change a little bit over the weekend in terms of the pattern, but we still got that big low there up in the Gulf of Alaska near the Aleutians, where it's been for weeks. When we look at temperatures, though, we talked about some colder air spilling into the Great Lakes. So by Monday, just out into the plains, we are going to see colder than average temperatures spill in. So temperatures are going to get colder, basically east of the Rockies. But notice the heat and the dryness will continue along and west of the divide. But a little bit of a change for the plains. Early next week, some colder air spills on in. Longer term, again, we're just going to have to show you maps that go out pretty far to see any big changes. But we're seeing, this is from the European artificial intelligence model, of a high building in the eastern Pacific, the low not in the Gulf of Alaska anymore, but further back to the north and west. So this configuration of the jet stream will lead to some colder, more unsettled weather and hopefully some moisture by then. We keep talking about the 18th or after the 18th, and that's still on target this morning. Have yourself a great Tuesday. We'll see you tomorrow.